I will never cancel culture you.
Thank you. I don't know what I can and cannot say anymore, honestly. As a white guy, I don't feel bad for me. That's not the point of this. I'm the victim here. But I don't always feel like I can say anything without being wrong anymore. And that's really tricky. And it's sad because both of our races have so much to offer if we just got along and just worked together and realize that there's beauty in diversity, you know?
Dude, you're preaching to me, man. It's like the way I grew up, my dad was a pastor in the inner city of D.C., and he deliberately brought black, white, Asian, Jewish, Hispanic people into my house because as a kid, a lot of my friends were being taught, true story, Wally, that the white man was or is the blue-eyed devil.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in inner city, and a lot of these guys are Farrakhan followers, you know, and it's like on the surface they wear little bow ties, and they're all just like chippy, whatever. But down deep, there was some real dark hatred going on.
Yeah, you might have that side in your race, but then we've got the jacked up white supremacist version of that too.
But the thing is, so going on for me, I never saw a different color as a threat or I mean, I saw it as a opportunity, not even a challenge. It was just like, oh, great, this person's different than me. That was the draw for me.
Right.
You know, so once again, well, you know the beauty is in the diversity. Go after it like a wild man. You know, a bouquet is beautiful for a reason because of all the different colors.
I think what happens is when people start getting offended for other people, and they're not the ones that really have the right to be offended, and then all of a sudden you make every issue a race issue where it doesn't need to be, what happens is you ultimately undermine and water down the really serious race issues that we need to address still. But when that gets put in the same playing field as something that really isn't a racial thing, but we're trying to be so politically correct that you really do hurt the cause and you push us way back for actually having any kind of unity, I think.
You know, I agree with that 100%, word for word, but I'll also say this too. I think a big part of moving forward as the human race in all this craziness in the world, not to mention race stuff, is to just be deliberate. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to be conscious, Wally, and go out of your way, sometimes people, all of us, and say, I wonder what this person's like. I'm going to stop surmising and guessing and judging or whatever. No, I'm going to get to know this person.
Right.
Because they may not come to your neighborhood. They may not come to your church. They may not eat where you eat. So you're going to, I think, this is my little 2 cents. I think it's going to have to be a deliberate move on behalf of humans to go and just, we say it all the time, it sounds so cheesy, but leave your comfort zone. You're going to have to leave where you're comfortable, where everybody looks like you, talks like you, walks like you, smells like you. No, go somewhere different because that's the deep end.
I think inside of that, there has to be grace for that and the ability to make mistakes or say the wrong thing accidentally as you try to navigate stuff, you know?
Don't be afraid. I jokingly say I want to write a book one day and call it Everything You Ever Want to Know About a Black Person We're Too Afraid to Ask.
I would read it.
Dude, I would read it too, you know what I'm saying? Because I'd be like, they're like, well, I'm not, but, tiptoe. No, just, get in and get your hands dirty. See,
because that's the thing.
It's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, but it's okay.
And maybe it's relational because, people like you and me, we can have a conversation about anything.
All day.
Your friend and my friend Gabe, who still plays with Toby, and he's a black dude, and we can have a conversation about anything, and none of us get offended, and it's all good. That's where we have to get to the point where we can not be offended and have honest conversations if we truly want to move forward.
Yes. I'm always amazed at how, sometimes this is kind of my guilty pleasure, as weird as it sounds, but I love to see when a black or white person or a person of any other color is kind of pushed out of their comfort zone into a situation where they have to dig in.
Yeah.
And I've watched it, Wally, more times than I can count.
Sure.
And when I can, I have intervened and been like, hey, because I feel like I'm a conduit of catalyst. I always have been.
Right.
DC Talk, all my bands I've been in, it's been me, the Chocolate Spot, and a bunch of white guys. Never changed.
And that's a world that I wouldn't know about, and that other people wouldn't know about. And so that goes back to getting to know a person and what their experience is, what their life experience is.
Perfect example. When I met Toby and Mac Toby McKeon back in the day in college, he was my first. All the white people, all through my life, all through high school, white friends. But Toby became my first real, deep, best buddy.
Yeah.
Didn't give a flip that he was white. that was even more intriguing because I wanted to know what it was like for him, on a deeper level, growing up and vice versa. But that we call it living integration, and that friendship has affected a lot of people, and I say it to the glory of God. These two guys, Toby Mac, Michael Tate, our friendship has changed our trajectory,
sure,
and still is. And has impacted our market, CCM. You know that over the years.
Absolutely. So. I think I'll be happy when I see a day where there's a story where a white person treats a black person well and no one is surprised. Like, I think that'll be a good day. Because, like, right now we see that and we go, yes, we're getting it right. We're doing this, And when it just is the norm, that's going to be a good day.
I'll tell you what gets me down deep. And I'll try not to sound too frustrated when I say it. But we are in 2021, year of our Lord, and we are still struggling with this crud.
Right.
It's like I'm trying to read all the slogans. Let's come together. We're beautiful. We're more. All those slogans. No, it's like complimenting an adult for using a fork and a spoon.
Right.
It's like you think.
Yeah.
It's like it should be.
Yeah. That should be the default.
Exactly. That's what we do.
Yeah.
That's my creator made me as a man, to admire beauty.
Right.
And I think we've got to make the distinction between that and then going to the next level where you say, okay, you're coming to the bus tonight. That's a massive, there's a massive chasm between appreciating, gosh, you're beautiful, or saying, hey, you come and, we're gonna hook up tonight. There's a massive difference between those two. And that's where you've got to do your self-editing. That's where you've got to do your self-discipline and say, no, even as great as that might be, why would I destroy all of this just for this?
Tell us a little bit about your walk with the Lord, your time with the Lord.
Okay. Well, we eat every day to sustain our physical bodies. I think it's really important to pray every day and to read the Word every day. Now, I don't do that. I pray every day. I don't necessarily get in the Word all day, although I'm trying to get better at that. But there's two men that live within us. There's the physical being, and then there's a spiritual man. And if we don't feed that spiritual man, that physical man's right there ready to take over, because he wants to take over, and that's one thing I've realized early in life is, I want to say it's a battle, but it kind of is. There is this struggle between the two because our physical man wants to dominate. And it's a discipline just like anything else. And I have my days that I do better than others. I am far from perfect, far from it. But I think that's what I always try to remember. And I think another thing that a lot of people miss out on is to not to get too weird with your politics or your partisan mentality. I think, number one, I'm super grateful. Every day my 2 feet hit the ground, I say, thank you, Jesus. I get another chance today to get it right.
Amen.
And I think that's super grateful. And I've learned to love people. Now, look, if you think like me, wonderful. If you don't, I'd rather have you as a friend than have you as an enemy because we don't agree. Right?
That's good. That's right.
I think we've got to change our combative stance on a lot of issues with people because, look, God doesn't love me any more than he loves anyone else in this world. And I think we've got to remember that as Christians. Sometimes we tend to get to that point, well, I'm more worthy because I follow Christ. So that makes me just a little bit better than you. Well, that's not the case at all. I'm a sinner saved by grace, right? And that's I don't deserve to go to heaven. I don't deserve salvation, but I have salvation because of what he did, not because of who I am. I'm just my righteousness is as filthy rags. So I'm as righteous as nothing. My righteousness. So what I mean to say, I'm only, my standing in who I am is because of him, not because of me. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I think when we embrace that and realize that, just by the grace of God go I. And dude, I think when you start to think like that, and I'm not saying maybe in a more humble stance, but I'm not saying, you're going to have your opinions and that's great. I think it's very good to have your opinions, but I think being grateful, thankful, and a lover of people. Just a lover of people. Yeah.
One of the things people notice when you're drumming, that there's veins sticking out of your arms. Is this...
I know, right?
So tell us about your workout. And is that because you have to be a drummer, you have to have strong arms, or you're just a healthy guy? And what do you do?
I think it's a way I play. I hit hard. And when I play, I don't play just from here. You're going to see this here. So for me, playing drums is a total body experience. It's just not, I'm not just doing this and it's and some drummers like that, and that's cool. But for me, you're going to see it all. I'm going to lay it out all on the table. You're going to see I want you to feel something so bad that I'm going to give you everything that I have. And what that means is I'm not a singer, so it's not going to come through here, but it's going to come through here. And you're going to get everything that I can possibly give you on that night. It's going to come from it's a heartfelt thing. It's a personality, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to show you as much as I can how much I love doing what I do, and I'm going to try to win you over. I think it's like we go out as a team, we pray as a team. When Newsboys go on stage, it is this 4-pronged. Well, it depends if we've got the United, but it's these 4 to 6 guys going out as a team, wanting to win, and impact you as much as we possibly can.
Still want to know how much you bench?
You know what? People ask me that all the time. I have no idea. I'm not a weight guy. I'm not a lifter. A guy. I don't want to injure anything. I don't want to. I can get big. I've just got that kind of body. I can get big pretty quick, but I don't want to do that because I'd rather be long and lean and flexible rather than bigger, bulkier, and less flexible. That's not what I want to do. And I want to be, I'm all about, I'd much rather have great cardio, endurance, stamina, and flexibility than be big. There's something about, to me, getting in the ocean, getting the seawater. I think there's something so revitalizing about it. I think it's good for my brain. It's good for your sinuses. It's just good for your health in general. I think there's something in the salt water that's life-giving to us. And I don't know. That's my opinion anyway. That's the way I feel whenever I get in the ocean. I just feel so much better.
It's funny because, thinking you're from Australia and you're in the water. What about sharks surfing? That's all I get. It's a stereotype, maybe, but there's always sharks. And
yeah, there is. It's a funny thing. We knew they were there, but we never kind of really worried about it. It was the weirdest thing. We were just brought up a little different, I guess. And there's, a lot of things in Australia want to kill you. The spiders, snakes, sharks. Just about everything wants to have a piece of you, But I think we were perhaps brought up a little tougher, and it just was what it was. And I didn't know anyone growing up that ever got attacked. So, but then, people had. So, on the other side of it, people die in car accidents every day. People die. There's way more people that die of car accidents, and we don't think twice about not getting into a car and go drive to wherever. So there's that.
What encourages and lifts you up in times of trials?
Just like anyone else, times of trials, get into the Word, man. Promises are there. I think sometimes we've got to self-encourage ourselves. Any one of us, when we wake up in the morning, we have a choice. And I'm not belittling people that do legitimately wrestle with mental issues. I'm not for 1 second want to belittle that. But I think for most of us, we have a choice whether we're going to be happy today or whether we're going to be negative today. And that's not to say that we just kind of move along in this lobotomized fashion. I'm happy. It's not that. It's I choose happiness today because I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful and thankful. Look, just to have your health these days, just to have people around you that love you, to be able to have a roof over your head, to have food in your belly, clean water to drink. That's something to be grateful and thankful for. And I think when you start your day with that mentality, it puts a smile on your face. I don't think I'm owed anything. I really don't. Even though this year is going to be a lot leaner financially. Right. You know what I'm saying? But it's all good.
Of course.
I am thankful and grateful that I still get to do this. One day I'll still get to do it again, which hopefully will be sooner than later. But I have a loving family. I have food in my belly. I've never wanted for anything. And that not only makes me grateful, but it also makes me it kind of puts this weight on me. It's like, what can I do for others? And that's why, we work with Child Fund, and I don't want to get off on that, but that's why we work so closely and dearly with Child Fund. And we've worked with many other institutions that when you go to most of the rest of the world, they don't live like we do. And we tend to think that they do. And we've got a lot of problems in this country, and we do, and they're legitimate. But when you go out of the borders of the US, most of the rest of the world has a way tougher days than we do. I mean, you go to anywhere in Africa, South America, they're struggling to put food on the table. They're struggling politically. They're struggling for fresh water, for medical, you name it. It's a battle. I mean, it is a battle every day just to survive. Well, we don't have that. Our survival is whether we're going to Macca's or Chick-fil-A for lunch. That's a big decision to make. Or, whether we put 93 octane or 91 in our tank. It's a big decision where, most of the rest of the world is not like that. So I think as you do get to a point of gratitude and thankfulness, you start to think, what can I do to help others? How can I lift them up? How can we lift them up as much as we can? I think it's the responsibility of Christians in general. I think we should be trying to lift others up rather than tear them down. So when I see Christians not do that, it hurts all of us. Because then the world goes, aha, I told you so, you Christians are a bunch of hypocrites. Well, some are, but it doesn't, there's a lot of people in general that are hypocritical. But I think we've got to learn to be lovers of people, and getting back to that, circling back around to that, lovers of people. That's why we do what we do. That's why I leave my home. That's why we support companies like Child Fund, is because I think we're required to not only to give back, to show the world the light that we have inside. And one of the ways that we can do that is help them to put food in the table, is to bring light to their plight.
How can people get a hold of that ministry that you guys are helping?
It's just Child Fund. They can Google Child Fund. I know they're on Insta. Google it, and you can Child Fund, which we work with closely. They're an awesome company. We've been with them for quite a few years now. Been on many trips overseas with Child Fund, and they do incredible work, as do World Vision, as do Compassion, as do Food for the Hungry. They all do amazing work because we've had a chance over the years to work with all of those companies. They're all awesome. But at the moment we're Child Fund, and we love them. They love us. And we go down to Mexico every year, work very closely with Baja Christian Ministries down there that build homes for the ultra needy. But yeah, that's, for me, that's the fun stuff, is to be able to give back and to shine a light on that. We build homes every year in the Baja, and one of the most gratifying things as a human being is to be able to hand those keys to the family that 4 days ago were living in the dirt, with sewer running through their house sometimes, with flies everywhere, smoldering fire in the corner of their house, leaking roof, just some conditions that are so, would blow your mind if the smells, just everything about it is just like you feel the humanity of it, because you realize human beings are not meant to live like this. But it's because of their situation, no matter what the situation was, political or whether it's whatever it is. But when you can hand the keys to a family that they're up off the dirt, they're on a concrete slab, they have walls, they have a door that locks, they have sliding windows, they have a cooktop, they have beds. We supply beds and mattresses and blankets and electricity. They have switches that work that aren't dangerous. They don't get electrocute the kids because they ran a wire off, some random wire that's draped over the community somehow. We make sure that all the electrical is up to par, that is not going to kill anyone, create a fire. All these things that when you can hand that key over, the gratitude that comes over that family you can't describe the feeling of that. And it's not that we're better than anyone else, we're not, but just as a human being, when you can do that for another human being, it's one of the most gratifying things, way more gratifying than playing a big show. And a big show is wonderful and great, and I love it, but it goes deep. The gratitude, that feeling goes deep. When they're crying, you may as well have given them $1 million. You know what I mean? And it's one of the most awesome feelings that a human being can have, I think.
I came on right after an album called Not Ashamed, and the keyboard player at that time, he had gone back to Australia or something like that. And so I played for that tour, and then I was only like 19 at the time. So back then there was just like guys coming and going, and I think everybody was a little bit like let's not commit like to a full-time thing until we know, So I was actually on the following record in '95 called Going Public, and that's the record that had Shine on it, but I wasn't in any of the pictures or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And then it was, Take Me to Your Leader was the first record that had my pictures on it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And you have this cool story where you were like driving the band around.
Yeah.
And when they were on a tour, and you became best good friends.
Well, it was funny because, when people ask, how'd you join the band? The band at the time was from Australia. I was from Detroit. And so a friend of mine, a youth pastor, he was promoting a Newsboys show in a high school gym right near where I lived. And he knew that my mom had just bought this Chevy Astro minivan. It was like one of those conversion vans. It was, and he was like, "Man, would you be willing to drive the band around town during the day while they're here? You have these guys called the runner who drives the artists around to just do whatever they need to do, laundry, whatever." So I drove the guys to and from the hotel on the day, and got to know Peter, the lead singer, and we had just bought the same keyboard, and so we were talking about that, and. I got to know the guys in the band. It was a really fun experience. I didn't really think anything else of it, but people behind the scenes that I knew were like, "Oh, that guy plays keyboard. He's great." Blah blah blah, all this stuff. So they were talking behind my back. And about 3 months later, I was coming home from a night class in college, and I was 18. And my mom says to me, "This guy with an Australian accent called. He wants you to call him back as soon as possible." So I look at the little slip of paper. It says Peter Furler. I'm like, "No way, that's weird." So I call up, and he says, "Our keyboard player's moving on, and we need somebody like ASAP." And so I knew they were playing out on the other side of the state that very next week. And he's like, "Well, just learn all the songs and we'll meet you out there." Mm-hmm. And, this was back before cell phones, texting,
right.
It's hard to get in touch with anyone, and it was click. And I'm like, "What?" So I stayed home from college for that week and just hung out in my parents' basement trying to learn all the songs as best I could. I drove out to meet the band that weekend, and they're like, "Well, if you want, why don't you just set up all your stuff on stage and play along with us? We'll listen. Our manager will listen, and we'll just see how that goes." Mm-hmm. And so I did that. There was about 2,500 people showed up. This was near Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I did the audition. They're like, "Oh, that was good. Why don't you play the show tonight?" So I played the show that night.
Why not?
That night. I don't even think most of the band or crew even remembered what my name was, and I'm on stage with the band.
Right.
And after that, we load down, tear down, load the trucks, everything like that. And I hopped into the bus and I said, "Well, what do you guys want to do?" And they're like, "Well, we're in Indianapolis next weekend. Why don't you just drive down and we'll see you there?" So I drive home. I was like, "Mom and Dad, I think I'm going to be dropping out of college tomorrow and moving to Nashville."
That's great. And so did you play with any other bands at that time? Like, were you playing with guys in town?
Local? A little bit, yeah. And I was doing like DJing. I was like a techno DJ. That was real popular at the time, raves and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was in like 2 or 3 other bands, and then I was going to college full time too. So when I told my parents, now that I'm a parent of 4 kids, I don't know how they were able to just take that and just be cool with it, Mm-hmm. And they were like, "Okay, we trust God. That's what He's got for you." And this was not like, we're not talking about the successful Newsboys that people know now. This was like before anything was really happening. And
it was about to happen.
It was about to happen.
You might even be able to say you were responsible for the ascension of the Newsboys into...
I don't know about that.
So that was funny. So that was 27 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now I just realized remember when I said 1997? That's where I got that 7 from, because you said, when we were talking beforehand, 27 years ago is when that all began. And like when you look back on all that, and so you and I first met not that long ago. One of your kids is involved in a theater program that we have here at the church. And you were sitting out in the hallway, and I said, "Hello, hey, how you doing?" You're like, "Well, I'm just putting together a set list for one of the shows." And I was like, "Well, that's pretty cool." And then your official title, like you're the band, are you band director, show director?
I don't know if you could put an official title on it. I'm just the guy that does all the things that no one else wants to do. So I think I've just accumulated titles over 27 years.
Which is funny
to get to this point.
Every time I see you sitting out in the hall working, like you have a different production part of the show pulled up on your computer that you're working on. So it's like...
Well, you have to get creative when you have so many kids and you're on tour a lot, so when you're home and you've got to find little blocks of time where you can get work done. And there's always something to be done. There's always some detail left undone or whatever. But yeah, I never, I get asked a ton of questions about like, how did you get into this, or how did you do this, or like, how did you learn that? And my story is not, it's not the typical story. I didn't go to school to really learn any of it. I just got thrown into the fire. And I remember, in 1994, when I was 19 years old, it was Peter who threw me into the fire. They were working on the record that Shine is on. And, Peter said, well, why don't you come into the studio every day and just work in here and whatever. Well, back then, it wasn't like today where everyone's got a laptop and you can learn and we all have the same tools. Back then, if you wanted to record music, you had to go in a studio and it costs, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there's gear like that you'd never seen before. So I got thrown right into it, and that's how I learned.
So that wasn't even like something you were doing before that. It was like a love that you acquired as you went.
Well, I couldn't because no one could afford to do that back as a kid. So to get into all that gear, and so it was just learning on the fly. And I remember, Peter would say, I need you to do this, and I'll be back in tomorrow. And I would just be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to use anything in here, And so that's, that whole, I think that's the difference between, culturally back then and now. It's like now everybody wants their plan perfectly put in front of them. They want to know exactly how it's going to go. They want to go to some school so they can learn it and have a degree. But real life doesn't work that way most of the time. You just got to jump in there and start swimming.
I always refer to it as a time when like each individual band was so unique.
Yes.
And so you couldn't go, you wouldn't mix them up. Everybody had a different lead singer, sounded different. Everyone had a different style, different whatever. And you guys were always on the front end of really pushing creative limits.
It is really unfortunate in a lot of ways that I have to explain that very thing to people, to younger people. Like they just don't understand that like there was so much more personality and so many more bands. And it's like now, there was no pressure to conform to a certain style or, you're really free to just be like your mainstream counterparts and just have fun. Now it's like, for us, we had so many records and tours and things that were failures. That's how we learned and that's how we got better.
Yeah.
But if you're like an artist now, it's like you can't afford to make a mistake or you're done. It's like one and done.
Right.
And there's just the industry is so much smaller and so much different. And then obviously there's a lot of pressure for artists to make music that fits on a radio format, because if it doesn't, then it really hampers their ability to get out there in front of people. But then by hampering their, or by trying to conform to a certain format on the radio, it doesn't allow them to be who they are, which also hinders them from being original. So we were fortunate to come up through those years. We were able to do really cool things and then really big failures too, and learn. But
one of the things, so about a year ago we had, the Christian group Whiteheart did their 30th reunion show for one of their biggest albums, Freedom. And I was we were talking with the guys beforehand and just kind of a similar conversation to what we're having right now. And, we just, the idea, like gone are the days when, so your previous release, okay, even if it was successful, like the next release would come out. And so for someone like me I'm going to the store, I'm buying your CD, right? And I put that in, and a lot of times it would be a completely different direction for the band, like a new experiment. Like even us talking about the Liberty Disco thing.
Yeah.
You put that in, you're like, wow, that's a risk, but it's so cool that you did it. So I always wonder in bands, especially with the name recognition of Newsboys or even I go back into the day of a DC Talk or whatever it may be, bands that had success and go, hey, let's try something new.
Yeah. Well, also with that, you're only as good as your last record. That's the crazy thing about the music industry. It's like, it's one of the few ones where you are literally having to apply. Now it's a little bit different now because you've got streaming and you can put things out on a more regular basis and keep people engaged in your socials. And it's not just one big push for this is your thing. Like back in the day, like your record would last you for 18 months or 2 years, and that was the theme and that was the push. And if that didn't work, then that's 2 years you were going to be suffering with whatever you made that didn't work. So that's the difference between then and now. But it was very risky. Like it's one of the only industries where you have to basically reapply for your job every 18 months.
Yeah,
or people move on.
Right. So you guys, okay, this is very well known now, so we're not covering new territory here. But so you're in the band. Peter Furler's the lead singer, and then in 2009-ish, right?
Yeah.
Then there's a change, and we know about that. Michael Tate comes in; he's the lead singer.
Yeah.
But I'm more curious for you as a member of the band, and kind of like where were you, what was.
It was very tough.
What was the feeling like? What's the future? Especially, you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, at that time we had been doing it for a while, and it was really tough. In fact, right, 2009, I think we were expecting our first kid. And I remember I was working on a record with Peter at his house, and I showed up one morning at his house. We had a studio in his house, and he said that, you know, he was kind of done. I think it was like a summer when I remember I walked into the studio, and he had talked about like Creation decided not to, which was the biggest Christian festival in the country. We had played it for like 20 straight years. They decided to pass and not book us that year. And he was like kind of seemed upset about that. And like, oh, it's over, you know, or something like that. And, you know, he had been touring straight for 20 years, which I totally get, and was kind of just burnt out of just doing that, what we just talked about, that same cycle, that same pressure that's always on you. And it's being like the lead singer and songwriter type guy. I think he's just like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So we were just about to finish a record, and he was talking about leaving. And so ironically, Michael Tate had come to visit. You know, obviously we'd known Michael for a long time. He had been living out in California, working on some solo projects. He was singing for like Carlos Santana and doing some stuff out there. And he just came in to hang out and sing some background vocals, you know. And so he was kind of hanging around the studio for a couple days. Well, you know, things don't stop, right? So we had shows booked like a year in advance.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, Peter wants to step aside, and we had like this, you know, meeting of the minds down at like Sperry's with our manager and some record company people and like the band guys. And we're like, what do we do? Like, who do we get? Like, we felt like we didn't want to just stop, you know, when you put like 20 years into something. And so our manager was like, well, what about Michael Tate? And we're like, from DC Talk? How in the heck is that going to work, you know? So Michael comes in, and we do a bunch of rehearsals, and it kind of goes good. It kind of goes bad, though. You know, he's having a hard time feeling like, you know, he's singing karaoke. Like, we didn't want it to be like karaoke version of ourselves with a different lead singer. Like, the two guys are so different. We knew that it was going to have to take something completely different to make it work. So, but at the same time, we have all these shows booked with people expecting Peter to be there.
Right.
You know, and honestly, we had some really horrible shows at first. In fact, with Michael, as he was kind of getting his feet wet, and one of them was at like an Acquire the Fire event in North Carolina. And we laugh about this now, so that's why it's funny. But he just had one of those nights where he just had a horrible night, forgot words, just, you know, when you know, like any of us, you start to lose track and you're on stage, and then it's like, you know, snowballs. And it was so bad that he just left the stage and was really embarrassed, and he just kind of ran down the street. He just had to get away,
get it out, and express his frustration.
And so I get off stage, and I go to check my phone in the dressing room, and I get a text from my wife, and she says, oh, I just took a pregnancy test. We're expecting our first kid. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a dad, and I lost my job on Michael, the same day.
I'm going to need you to come back in here, Michael, and sing these songs.
Yeah. So it was a come to Jesus moment, and I think from that was like a turning point. We all like know it was, and so we went into the studio, and then that's when like Born Again came out, and then a couple years later, God's Not Dead came out, and then the movies came out, and then all that was like started snowballing in a better direction.
Right, but once again, to me, like what I hear in it is like the willingness to take a risk and do something that's going to go in a different direction, right? Yeah. Because you know, from an outsider and a listener, so Newsboys, you guys had a sound. Right, and then the announcement's made. We're gonna have this new lead singer. It's Michael Tate from DC Talk, and it's gonna be this whole thing. And so instead of just going, hey, let's just stay comfortable in this style of music that we have, Born Again comes out, and you're like, okay, that's a totally different.
Slaps you in the face.
Yes, you know, and it's all in line with who the band has been, which is a risk-taking band.
And that's me too. Like I'm a pretty conservative guy. Like people that know me, like it's just the way I am. My dad was the same way. I'm very like, I'm not a risk taker type of guy, but when it comes to music, you know, I would rather take the chance at something than just kind of ride the same old thing that you know that works. Cause you know, it's just a slow death for a career at that point. And that's not just for Christian music, it's for anything, you know what you're going to get if you do that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Welcome. It's great to be here with our friends, the Newsboys, in our home with me and Darla and our family. And so the If 714 initiative, which you guys have so graciously embraced, and we're thrilled to be partnering with you with it. God is blessing it beyond. As you take a look at the culture today, how important is intentional prayer right now for God's intervention, His guidance, His leadership for this country? Duncan, how about you? You're on stage every night.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things If 714 talks about is they really want authenticity.
Well, I think we seem to have a culture that's running headlong, like you mentioned, in the opposite direction that what we know to be truth. Effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. And we seem to leave it for the last thing, but what I found in my life was when I pray first, that these things come into fruition way quicker than they would if I hadn't.
You know, I think our culture today, it really impresses upon us, even as Christians, that like we're our own entities, and it's in a lot of ways, it's whether it's social media or whatever it is, it's kind of almost crafted us into our own gods, like our own little rulers of these little kingdoms. And I think for me, what prayer does is it takes the focus off of me and it puts it onto something so much bigger than me, and it makes me second, you know.
Not only do we all get to pray the same prayer as believers, but I like to bounce over and see what people are needing prayer for, and just pray along, you know, with a few of those every day, and it's just to get, you know, it connects you to somewhere else other than your own little crew.
I'll be honest, even over the last, you know, while we've been friends and we've adapted this whole 714 initiative with you, which we love, I've never really thought that hard about it in the sense of like people praying a number or people praying in prayer together. The actual prayers people are praying, and then the fact that you can just stop, calm yourself in the busy 21st social media frenzied environment we live in, and say, God, do something. Cry out, humble yourself, and pray expecting. Pray with faith. Amen. That right there, that's the whole point. That's what God wants. Yes. So you can pray at 7:14 a.m., you can pray at 7:14 p.m., or any time on the floor. That's the best one.
Do you remember you and Duncan came in when you left DC Talk,
right,
and then you left your own solo career?
Band, right?
You came in and you joined the Newsboys, and you and Duncan, the drummer, were here. I was on the old show Total Access, and it was fun and everything. But I remember telling you this isn't going to work. I'm like,
thanks for that encouragement, Wally.
Yeah, was I right or wrong?
Let the public weigh in on that one.
Yeah, how many years has it been?
It's been 11 years?
Yeah, see, I was wrong. I was dead wrong.
Yeah, I've been in Newsboys as long as I was in DC Talk.
Are you serious?
Yes.
See,
yes.
It doesn't
longer.
It doesn't seem that way.
I know.
Like DC Talk had such a heritage thing too, but so did the Newsboys. But then it's crazy to think you've been doing this with them for that long.
Wally, truth is, it shouldn't have worked. I mean, on paper, other words, because usually when a new lead singer takes over, you know, everybody's like, oh, where's the other guy? I missed this song, that song, but you kind of had to make it your own, you know?
Yeah.
We had some rough patches here and there, but for the most part, it was just get in and just grind, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what you do. That's what you've been on the road forever. And I've never been as happy to be as wrong on that one.
Oh, thanks,
honestly.
bud.
Like, it's great. You guys have cranked out some great music.
Thanks,
and
bud.
then COVID kind of changes things and everybody slows down. Is it weird for you being off the road?
The first month, I think we came on March 12th of last year from our shows.
Wow, you're like talking about that like you got out of prison. Like, you know the date. You know
the date. Because we were in Ohio. And I remember thinking, like you did, I'll be a couple of weeks.
Sure.
We'll be back at work, maybe a month or two. And the summer came, they kept closing things. And then the late summer came, and then fall tour was gone. But DC Talk fall tour, we had about to announce and plan, and that went away. And then winter came, and we still weren't working. I'm like, well, Lord, are you coming back?
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening here? What's going on? But slowly but surely, Wally, at being home, I got more comfortable. I started writing a record, and I thought this is actually good for us, good for me, because everything had to slow down. I mean, I was going at a crazy pace. All of us were. The world is.
You were the guy, like, anytime anybody, because people always ask me about different artists and like, what's Michael Tate like and stuff. I said, Michael Tate is always the consummate rock star. He's the guy that meets you, open arms, hugs you. Hey, bro, come on in. Hey, want to hang out backstage? And
I know.
Your life has been on stage to stage to stage to backstage to back, since you were young, you know?
Yep.
And like, you are that consummate rock star, you know? And so that would feel so weird, I think, when everything you know all of a sudden is taken away, and now you have to do your own underwear in the laundry. Like, what do you do with that? Like, how do you function?
I don't know, Wally. It was torturous. But funny, people said, all my friends were like Toby and Amanda, they were like, what is Tate going to do not being able to hug people?
Yeah.
You know, physical contact. I'm such a lover that way.
Yeah.
And then the whole distance thing started and the mask. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like putting your dog through a car wash. I don't know what time. That's a bad example. My point is it was bad. So, but I got used to it, and hey, here we are.
Well, you know what? If some good music comes out of this time, and actually some good rest for you, so that you can then come out and just tear it back up again. And I also want to be at the first show, back when it's full blown again, because I know that's going to be, all no holds barred.
No question about it, my brother.